Hello everyone, Fwipp here, and I thought for this video I'd do something different. I know you've seen me banning people for a while. I've been a server admin over at Hardcores for like at least a year. I lose track of time pretty easily in Minecraft. But anyway, I thought I'd actually talk about some tips about dealing with bans. Now, of course, if you've been watching my videos, you'd realize that rule 1 for me is always be sure of the reason when you're giving somebody a ban. People trust mods, so obviously the first thing that you need to do as a mod is be sure that this is a good reason to ban this player. For example, if you see a house that's been torn to pieces and grief is against the rules, you can't really be sure that that house has actually been griefed unless a player tells you, "Help, my house was griefed." For example, it's happened that people ask other people to take down their house for them, and so this was on purpose. Or if you see an island that's just covered in lava, maybe they were, trying to make a really bad-looking volcano. It's possible. And always have proof when you think somebody is hacking. Either video evidence or a screenshot that you can show other people, or simply being there in person. If you've been around for a long time, people will, trust your opinion. Because reasonably, mods aren't going to be around banning people unjustly, because that's just wrong. But I would have to say, you need to be sure, first and foremost, that there's a good reason to ban people. Or else, when people ask you to unban them, what are you going to say, right? Always have that in mind. Now, the next tip I would have to give for every server out there, that's multiplayer, is that if you are giving somebody a lengthy ban, for example, 4 or 5 days a week, what would probably be a good idea for your server is to have some place where people can see the bans that are long. Now, for little ones like a day or two, I would have to say that's probably unnecessary because by the time people check why they were banned, they'll be unbanned anyway. And because, well, for those things, they're smaller, right? If you know that somebody was griefing somebody and they're like, "Why was I banned?" Well, you can reasonably tell them, "Well, you really should know." But if, you've given somebody 5 days for a lava grief, you should mention it somewhere so that not only will they be aware, but the other mods will be aware of why these players are getting banned. Because, well, if somebody keeps making the same problem over and over again, reasonably you can assume that bans aren't going to help, and you might want to consider a permanent ban for them because they don't care about the rules. Now, for my next tip. When you consider how long you should ban people, you should think about the severity of the issue. I mean, if it's a new player that doesn't really know the difference between taking down a tree and taking down someone's house, perhaps just talking to them in person is enough. Or just giving them, like, a day or two for it. And then they'll realize that, oh, there was something I did wrong. Was a player being, like, mischievous, covering a town in water? Think about how long it would have taken people who didn't have the drain command to remove all the water, right? Was the person actually breaking all the windows in a house just to be mean? Think about their intent. Or were they just taking a bunch of iron blocks that players had placed in their house and didn't protect them? These are all things to consider, but the first thing that you really need to do is always be consistent in your bans. If you say that a minimum sentence for griefing a house is 2 days, then keep that in mind, and if it gets out of hand, make it 3 every now and then. 4, if they don't stop. Be objective, consistent, and, again, equality is very important. Now, the next thing I want to give as a tip for banning people is, what do you do about hackers? Now, what I'm talking about is people that use client-side mods to gain an advantage over other players. This can be the common things such as fly mod, or things in PvP which deal auto damage, or allow people to run while eating, or chat mods so that they can spam a huge amount of text all at once. While you can get plugins to deal with a lot of these players, the issue will come up of what to do with the ones that actually succeed at getting through your plugins. And what I would have to say is, if your server doesn't go about banning hackers, or, listening to claims that people are hacking and trying to get rid of these players, what will happen is that people will see that when they use client-side mods, that they get away with it. And there's nothing worse than having a play environment where it's basically people that don't hack versus people that do. That will absolutely get out of hand. You will basically lose everybody, or people will just become hackers themselves in order to deal with the situation. This happens a lot on PvP servers if it isn't managed correctly. So I would have to say you really need to give an extended length of time for people that use client-side mods, because anybody that goes on multiplayer servers right now know that generally in the rules, client-side hacks will give people bans, so they know what they are doing. And, well, taking off mods in order to play on servers is not something people generally want to do, so you need to show them that there is a large reason for why they might want to do that. For example, an automatic 7-day ban, or, a permanent ban, possibly, if they're using something very serious. You need to be firm when you want a good play environment, is what I would have to say. I know it's a bit mean to ban anybody that hacks, but really, they know what they're doing, so you need to know what you're going to do with dealing with them, because it will come up eventually. The next thing that you need to do when thinking about bans is get to know the situation. When you're investigating when one player wants to ban another player, remember that there's at least two sides to every conflict. If one person is accusing the other person of a troll, hopefully they're online at the same time, so actually go there and see what's happening. You can even turn yourself invisible, hopefully, if those commands exist, and just watch them to see what's going on. Perhaps the first player is annoyed at people who walk into his house and don't leave. And while that makes some sense, it's not necessarily trolling yet. Trolling should be against your rules, but in a multiplayer game, people should expect to see other people, right? It's not really an excuse for new players to not know the rules of a server, but what's the point of people banning other people? It's to get them to change their behavior, right? It's to get the play environment better. So maybe just being friendly and explaining people that they've done something wrong can be the right solution, and a ban might not be necessary at all. And then what? Then you've got really friendly staff and everyone's happy, right? It's a game, you're meant to have fun, but banning can be part of it to make sure that other people don't ruin it for other people. Alright, my next tip is, you gotta take people's words on things, but you gotta be cautious at the same time. So kind of have that in your head, those two little conflicting ideas at the same time. For example, if one player says that they've had all their stuff stolen, but you've got a chest protection plugin, you might want to go to their house and see what's going on, because maybe they didn't know to use that? Or perhaps they've let other people onto their chest, so maybe the person they're living with in their house is actually the culprit. But be cautious, right? At the same time, that player might just be wanting a bunch of free items from somebody. That's pretty common. Actually, in line with that, my next tip is, and I've really gotten this over recent experiences, always be wary of people that ask you to unban people. Now, you might be thinking, hey, maybe they just want you to unban that other person because they were your friend, right? But if you've been keeping in mind all the other tips, especially rule number 1, always be sure of the reason, then you know that if that's the case, then you'll just need to explain to his friend that yes, this person should have been banned because you know personally that they should have been banned. And assuming that all your other mods keep that rule in mind, everything will work. The thing is, if you have the /scene or the /whois command, I would recommend checking the IP of anyone that asks you to unban other people, because in today's Minecraft world, people have more than one account. I've seen people with over 5. So, basically, the player that you banned could be just getting on another account and trying to convince you to unban himself. That's pretty weird, And in fact, that's another thing to think about. Somebody that uses another account to get around server bans. What would you say to do with that player? Should you make the original ban longer and also ban his other accounts? You need to think that an IP ban is actually usually permanent. So unless this is consistent, or this player is obviously showing no regard for your rules whatsoever, for example, somebody that has been spam advertising, then comes back the next day with a new account to try and get you to unban him saying nothing was wrong, well, that's pretty obvious. People that troll the staff of any server really are asking to get banned. And with that case, there really needs to be no sympathy for them because they know what they are doing. Now, you might be thinking that bans are a very negative thing, but when you consider how servers work, they're really a way for you to make sure that the players that are playing correctly are, in a way, rewarded for it. Because if the people who are doing the wrong thing aren't being banned, then they'll just be running amok. And very, very soon, your server environment will be quite negative compared to what it could be. Bans always have a place in multiplayer servers. Don't think of it as being a negative thing. It's just a part of what staff do. If servers didn't have bans, well, people would get away with probably literal murder and pillaging, which I'm sure anybody going onto a server looking for a friendly place to play would not want to find out. Be sure you've got trusted staff managing it, places where people can actually see why they were banned, and, just simply talking with people about why you want their behavior to change can be enough sometimes. Anyway, thanks for listening to my tips. This has been Fwipp. Hope you liked this video and that it helped you think about this in a different way, maybe. See y'all later.